This is a very exciting episode. It's been at least a year in the works. I'm launching my first product. I've already created the announcement video, but this is the podcast going much more in depth on the whole design process, how we got here, making the Stalman Clamp. And with me is Brandon Peterson, who I've been working with this whole time. Thanks so much for coming on, but especially for all your help working with me on this.
Absolutely. Tyler, it's been a pleasure. Obviously, we go way back. Not only have I watched your shows for several years, but then just as general friends. I mean, we've been in talks about doing a product together, it seems like forever. And I'm just glad that one of those ideas finally rose to the top and is now a thing. So yeah, we're there.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a few iterations of just unrelated products that nobody will know what they are. But I think this was the right one. I think like everything came together just right. And teaming up with Kondor Blue, who is my partner in this, you work for them. You're the designer over there. What is your like specific role as well, just so people can understand the context of like what you're speaking to as we talk about it?
Yeah, well, it depends on the day. But my official title is Director of Product. So all things product really fall through me, at least on the the physical hardware side. I don't deal quite as much on the cable side of the business, which obviously we sell a lot of cables. So,
well, and also huge thanks to Lucas, who's not recording with us today, but has been a part of all of this too. I guess he's CEO at Kondor Blue. I don't know his title exactly, but he seems to do a lot over there. He makes things happen, and you guys have just been awesome partners in general. Anybody who isn't familiar with Kondor Blue already, I mean, you guys are relatively new to the scene of filmmaking gear, like relatively. Obviously been doing it a few years now. You are established. And that was why it was such a perfect fit to work together, because you guys like know the film industry, and not just like the YouTuber segment of it, but like you're making the gear for big professional cameras. Your stuff is seen on all the big sets, and so it was kind of this idea of like let's make something built for iPhone filmmakers that is at the same quality as cinema gear. You know, like this could hold up on any set.
You know, we actually just had our 5th birthday. I think we were too busy to really stop and focus much on it, but we've officially been in business 5 years now. And previous to that, Lucas, as you mentioned, he ran his own production company for about a decade previous to starting Kondor Blue. That actually is still actively running.
I mean, and another thing I love about you, just to pat you guys on the back a little more, is there's just like this insane hustle over there and like excitement about what you're building that I've always really appreciated and admired. And, you know, I've been using your cages on my bigger cameras for a while too. But let's get into it, because what I want to dig into today is like how we got here. What did we make? I mean, I kind of had this feeling. I remember like as we were first looking at versions of it that I was like, is anybody going to know what this is? Like, if we just show a photo of this on screen, will they just think it's a bottle opener? You know, like, can you tell what the product is at a glance? Because it is just so different from all the other iPhone filmmaking clamps that have been released ahead of time. So yeah, let's just like, I guess, go through the steps of like, how did we get here? Because it was a lot of, you know, texts and Zoom calls and just conversations back and forth. And all to get us to the point where we made what, you know, I think is the best, well, definitely the best vertical iPhone clamp, because it's the world's first vertical clamp. But you know, I just think also one of the best clamps out there if you would want to secure your iPhone to something.
I mean, you mentioned we looked at doing several different products. Obviously, you're very well known for creating high-end content, but then a lot of it focusing around sort of the Apple ecosystem. And so to me, it felt very natural to involve you in something around that. I knew that you'd bring a strong aesthetic and opinion, as well as use case. I wasn't wrong on any of those fronts.
I can't speak to aesthetics, but I brought opinions. That's for sure. Well, so let's also get into like what is it as well, because if people haven't seen the other videos, it is a it's a phone clamp. Like you've seen these before. Nothing completely new, but basically it's to attach your phone to whatever you want. The bottom of it is an Arca Swiss mount, which is completely standard in the industry. And it means that like you don't need tripod adapters. You don't need to screw anything into the bottom, which was something that we got a few messages about, was like just asking, well, like how well does this thread hold on to things underneath? It is completely secure once you are screwing it into something. Like if it's just a standard screw tripod style thing, it secures into itself. So it locks because of the pressure. So it absolutely never moves, even though that is actually a removable magnetized piece. But the way that I wanted it to work first is that it is Arca Swiss, which is like completely the standard, right? This is my favorite mount for smaller cameras. And it just means that like you can go into kind of any accessories that you already have and just screw them right in. So like all the Kondor Blue stuff obviously works, but it also works well with DJI's accessories. Manfrotto, like everybody makes Arca Swiss stuff at this point, and it's just completely rock solid without adding anything else to it. You've got a solid mount, and then when you take it off, you can just continue to use your phone without disassembling it. Like a lot of the other clamps that I've used in the past, once they're on your phone, it's all this big monstrosity. Like it kind of becomes a big mess. And I wanted this to be something that you would attach it when you started shooting and you would take it off when you were done, and it would be comfortable that whole time. Like the whole unit can just fit inside your pocket. And I mean, I think we succeeded at that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was actually just talking to a customer in our showroom today. He's looking to get something for his phone. He's really excited, just getting into some video production for his business. And he just kept on commenting about how elegant it was and how well it worked with his phone, which his phone is something he's proud of, because he's like, oh, I just dropped a lot of money on this iPhone 15 Pro Max. That was a lot of our goal, right? Like Apple products in and of themselves are so like beautiful and to the point that I didn't want anything that was like too loud and distracted from that, but it could fit in and just magnify and really solve some of those core problems that we face as filmmakers when using our phones. Because like I can't, like the number of times that we brought up is this better than just using the phone on its own? Like that was our bar. Yeah. Like how can we make it that good and simple, but better?
Yeah. And as we were starting, like we weren't even totally locked into like, is this a clamp first? Like we're like, iPhone filmmaking product, like how's that going to evolve? And that's what we kept coming back to, was like, I don't want accessories that are worse than just holding the phone. Because that's how I generally operate. I spend most of the time just running around with holding my phone. And I think a lot of people, especially if they're just getting started with iPhone filmmaking, think that they need the whole kit, right? Like you need extra lenses and you need extra mics and you need the clamp and the tripod and the gimbal and everything. And you're probably going to find a few of those items that you do need, but very few people I think use all of them. And I still end up really often going back to just my phone, because the basics are already there. Like the Apple did a pretty good job. But so we wanted something that would make it first, do no harm, right? First, don't make it any worse to shoot with or use your phone, and then let's add on from there. So other things that I think worked out perfectly is that when we were designing this, it was in the iPhone 14 era, right? And this is really like targeted at iPhone 15 primarily, which is another like two bold things here, that it's vertical first and that it's iPhone 15 first in the same way. It does work on Android. There's USB-C in the bottom, so if you don't have USB-C, you're going to be missing out on some features. But overall, we really targeted the latest iPhones, and it turned out to be for good reason, because once the iPhone 15 was announced, going to USB with all these different accessory expandability options, like being able to attach mics and hard drives, we didn't know that was coming. Like at first we thought we were just building something to hold the phone, and then it turns out you can attach literally everything you want with this and have USB splitters and hard drives and batteries and microphones and monitors, and the list is infinite. You can do everything you can with a real camera. So we wanted to be able to scale up like that too, like start with something really simple and elegant and be able to build it into something larger and more complicated.
It's easy to make something look like it's feature packed. It's a different product that has all the right features in the right places. And that's something that we talk about a lot, especially with cage design. People that are just getting into it, they're like, oh, I just need a cage because one, it looks cool, and two, I guess I need to mount some other stuff. But they don't really even know what they're mounting and so forth. So if you don't like understand sort of the general end goal, like, and like even beginnings, like, okay, using your phone by itself, that's sort of the baseline. And then you have those other accessories you add on, right? But if you don't know what you're like working towards, you're going to end up with just a huge mess. And so for us, it was like, okay, we're going to have these mounts. They're going to be in critical spots, and how they're used is very thought out and intentional. Like the fact that, I mean, you mentioned Arca, right? Arca is a weird standard because all those things within that type of category, there's a lot of people who will claim to have an Arca plate on something, but then it doesn't fit all things.
I have
and
run into that, and it is so frustrating. And
it is.
by the way, this is just a tip for anybody. Before you go out on the shoot, make sure all your Arca plates and clamps like actually fit together. Because I've been there, and I get to the shoot, I'm like, oh, I brought the clamp and I brought the adapter, and they don't lock, and it is embarrassing. So double check.
Yeah.
But we made this to, we tested on a lot of different devices, and so far it feels as as compatible with as many as possible, which I didn't even expect that to be a problem, but one of those things you learn when you design a physical product.
Yeah, for sure. And like for us, like DJI is one of those ones that their Arca is like much more on an extreme, but yet it's like one of the most used Arcas for that, that use case on a gimbal. And so we designed to that, but then keeping in mind that a lot of Arca clamps as well have the ability to expand and contract much more than other clamping mechanisms. And so it definitely is reverse compatible on many different devices, but that primary use case of using it on a gimbal, if somebody wants, is for sure there and works great. So
yeah, and then let's talk about like scaling it up too, because it holds your phone. Yeah. That's the basic. That's actually what I think most people would use it for. But we did add spots and ways to attach other things. So ways that's going to be able to scale up is things like the different recording options and like media readers, hard drives. A whole bunch of them I featured in the launch video about the Stalman clamp, but you can attach those either to the back or to the top. You can use all sorts of standard movie industry clamps and rigging gear and build it out into like, as big of a monster as you want. Like you can turn this into the full on cage. We just wanted to start with something that was a little more straightforward as the base. Cages definitely still have their place. I think it's just that this reminds me, I want to go back a step to like a bit of the origin of how we ended up designing this. Like, why is this vertical, right? Like, why is this what it is? Okay. We go to a lot of influencer events. My wife has been doing, like kind of fashion blog stuff forever. We used to cover New York Fashion Week a lot. We go to events with people that don't think of themselves as filmmakers, don't think of themselves as photographers, but that's their job, right? They contribute to TikTok and Instagram and they make a living off of it. And they usually are shooting with just their phone, absolutely nothing else, no lenses attached to it. Like all the professional phone filmmakers are not using a lot of accessories. But the one thing they do need to do is secure their phone to something. That's a pretty regular thing. And so when we were talking about this early on, I'm like, look, at the time, I was like at an event right at that moment. And, earlier on, we were just experimenting with like a whole bunch of different ideas, like standard clamps that might only be horizontal. And I'm like, look, everybody around me at this event is shooting vertical, and at every other event I go to, like, this is how everybody shoots. This is how content is created. The whole reason for mobile filmmaking being such an enormous industry is because of vertical platforms like Instagram and TikTok. Of course, like this is all just kind of like obvious, but at the same time it was underserved. Like nobody was building stuff targeted at that. So I mean, I'm just so excited that we're actually able to like really pursue that and commit to like, look, a lot of people only film vertically. Still works horizontally, of course, like you can mount it that way, but like it is the priority for so many people when they're using their phone. So let's give them the ultimate tool for that.
And this is like why we hadn't made a phone clamp to begin with was just, it was all a race to the bottom for 99% of the clamps on the market. And it didn't seem like there was too much that we could really innovate on, and we for sure weren't going to be able to beat on price. But then like we tested a bunch of them and they're terrible. Like by and large, they don't
Unfortunately,
clamp
yes.
well. And then the vertical function is like the last thought, if even a thought. And so it's really easy to clamp a phone horizontally, even though so many people are bad at it. I mean, I don't want to throw shade, but like seriously, like one of the key things that we said was, okay, it's got to clamp easily and very securely. And so by adding the extra width to the clamp, that wider footprint definitely helps. And then we tested so many different styles of clamping, angles of how the clamps approached, pads, different thicknesses and materials, so many springs. Like we were cutting our own springs and setting them up to get everything dialed just right.
Like the final spring ended up being just like so quiet and feeling so rock solid, like
Yeah.
no wiggle. I love it.
Like normally this is like nails on the chalkboard. And we
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it to
yeah.
where,
Opening and closing it.
yeah, like it just, you hear that metal on metal, and it's like the bolts are almost always going to be steel or stainless steel against that aluminum, and that's like especially like the harder versus softer material. It's just aluminum shavings, just they're coming off a little bit at a time. We actually went in, and on the inside there are nylon caps on both ends that are like trapped between the bolt head and the top portion, so that the spring is just always pressing those, tensioning them, and you're never getting metal on metal contact. And so having that nice out of box experience, even like the fact that when they come down, there's just like a little air gap in there so that those aren't bumping each other and making a loud noise either.
Well, this is all making it feel like it fits with an Apple product. Like I don't want it to feel like it's any cheaper than the iPhone that it's attached to. Like it should be of the same build quality. That was the goal.
Right. So here's the thing, and not to get too far off topic here, but I love home design as well. It's something, and I'm sure you do as well, based on the things I've seen in your home, Tyler, and obviously in your studio. So one of my hobbies is going around and walking through homes as they're being built, and then when a friend shows me their new home, I'm like, oh, this is great. The home's great, but they didn't think about the furniture, right? It's like this is furniture moved from a previous house, or maybe they went to a bigger house and the furniture's too small or it just doesn't match. And I feel that way with like camera accessories too. Like it's not just about buying the camera, because I mean that's where it's like all shiny and fun, right? That's the new house in this analogy. But then you don't think about all the accessories and what that means, and how it needs to have a good pairing. So the phone's $1,500, or $1,200 to $1,500, depending on what size and everything else you're getting. Like you should plan on spending a few $100s at least on the accessories to make this a more effective filmmaking tool. And so I think that the price fits in nice where it's a premium clamp. And so, it's backed by a lifetime warranty. It's something that you can really lean on. And those two marry each other really well.
There's another thing that you're speaking to, like how solid and rigid it is. There's something I was thinking about with the other clamps that, work for vertical mounting, because there's quite a few of them. This is the one that I was probably using the most often ahead of time, which I don't remember the brand, but I'm holding it now. I don't even see a logo. This is something off Amazon. But the thing that kills me is just pressing the record button. Like it wiggles a lot. Like it moves, I don't know, like half a centimeter here, just touching the screen. So like anytime you make a change on anything on the phone, if what you're trying to set up for is something like a time lapse, you're changing the perspective every time you touch the phone. Like you have to just completely walk away from the phone, which is, I mean, not ideal. Like often you need to do something. You need to,
Always triggering it from your watch.
Yeah, no, totally. Getting that like security, I think it's more than just like the aesthetics of that you've got something that like looks more secure. It actually functions better. It works better in the environment. You can trust that your phone's not going to fall off. And like something that we landed on that it's not that it was a mistake, but more of like a happy accident, was eventually we ended up in this sort of strange place of adding an adapter onto the bottom. So like in the box, there's this 40 gigabit per second USB-C adapter that you plug in separately, like it's a separate piece. And as you're installing, you take off the bottom, you pop it in there, and it gives you like that L shape so that now you have access to your USB out the back. Kind of a crazy thing to do, but what we realized is by doing that, we also made the whole thing like really kind of the most secure clamp ever. Like in all the things I've done, like all the ways I've shaken it, nothing has fallen off. It doesn't even like wiggle. It doesn't loosen. It doesn't move at all, which is rare. Like compared to all the other clamps that I've used, like they are not, they're not like that. It wiggles. So, we wanted to have something super strong, and we ended up with something even stronger because there's that extra point of contact inside the USB plug.
You think about how a phone plug is normally used, and you have this cable that just like is plugging straight out, and it becomes kind of a nuisance. And so as we started thinking about vertical and like, oh, well, how are we going to avoid the port? What are we going to do about that? And just settling on this idea of the adapter and having the hole and slot, like there's a lot of features built in now where even on the underside, we have a pad so it can give just a little bit extra for those thicker cases. We've tested onto cases up to 2.5 millimeters thick, which is a pretty chunky case for, the whole thickness of the case, and it can still connect and record. But then, like, it becomes a test of, well, we want it deep enough that it can reach those things, but when you just throw it in the bag like this, we don't want the adapter to fall out. So, yeah, I mean, it's in there. It is like, if you touch it, it could probably fall out. But in terms of like, just like if you throw this in the bag, you can at least know that, okay, it's going to be there when I go to get it next time. And so,
well, and I remember when I did a few videos breaking down the behind the scenes of the Apple videos, and something we talked about, like I was talking to Alex Lindsay about this, is like, well, what's this little 90-degree adapter they're using? So they had one on it, bringing all the cables back from the phone. And we were like, what is that? We haven't seen that anywhere. So when you and I started talking, I was like, this must exist because Apple has one. So somewhere out there's this super fast cable that will not slow down charging or transfer speeds or the flexibility of, USB hubs or anything like that. So I was very impressed that you guys were able to find this tiny little magic device. And, also just for anybody that does end up picking this up, be aware that it's fragile, right? Like this is an electronic, there's a joint in it. So as you're plugging it in and out, just like always try not to apply any additional pressure to it. Like this is the one like somewhat fragile thing of just make sure that every time it's going in and out of the port, that it's going directly in and out and there's no bending.
And then we even have these little additional pads. We have a 0.5 millimeter one.
If people see the pads without reading the instructions, they might be like, oh, this is garbage. So, don't throw them out. There are 2 pads in here and you're going to want to use at least one of them. So
really, it depends because you've got a thicker case. So in that case, you wouldn't want one. But if you have like a medium case or a really thin case, or you're rocking no case, and know that you're going to consistently be doing that. That's why we've got 2 different ones here. And that's just to kind of fill that gap so that it is more balanced. And when you're pulling it out, it increases the longevity of this adapter.
So now that we got through all of this, all the struggle to make this product a reality, looking back, is there what was maybe the biggest design challenge for you? Like what was the thing that was hardest to overcome? I have an answer. I'm wondering if it's the same as yours, but what do you think?
Man, it was a lot of things combined, but like picking, I'll condense it down to this, picking what features go where, so like what types of mounts, and then the one mount that was particularly challenging was that mount on the bottom of the Arca, and figuring out how that was going to work in conjunction with the whole system. And then just like dialing in that look with going around the camera block, I think that was a pretty bold move. And one of the things that made me start down that path and be like, hey, Tyler, like this is kind of crazy, but what do you think? Was actually a video you did. It's probably like 2 years ago now, if not more, with the launch of the new iMacs, and how you talked about the distinct shape that iMac has had since day one, all the way back to 1984. And it's always had that sort of chin design, right? And if you were to just draw a silhouette, almost anyone would know that's an iMac. And so phones, and especially Apple, has always been pretty iconic with the shape, where it's had an evolution, but it's definitely become that phone version of an iMac. And so I like that this shape just plays off that, right? Like it's iconic that, hey, this is like first and foremost an iPhone tool. So
yeah, I mean, I like that if you just see it, you could make an icon of it and you know what it is. Like it's not another clamp, which I think is a pretty great sign of a good product design. You know, I don't know if we'll see knockoffs someday, but you know, we'll know that we were there first, because that's what I was going to say. That was my like answer for what was the hardest, biggest, craziest thing, was that moment when we got this super weird, distinct shape. And you know, moving away from the idea of like finding different ways to, you know, kind of riff off of the same concept that you can get for $20 on Amazon and from a million different companies, where it's like big and clunky and like, you know, we played around with these things. We're like, none of this is nice, right? Like none of this feels like in the universe of Apple, and what we landed on, I think, got so much closer. And I'm really glad it did. And I couldn't have done it without you. So, man, just like, thank you. Thanks so much, Brandon. This is a huge journey. And I've talked to other YouTubers that have made products before. They warned me it was hard, and they were right. It is a lot of work to create a physical product. So I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, to your credit, you hung in there, and I really appreciated that. Like where, you know, if it was late at night and you'd send me like a thought, I'd be like, you know what? That's a really good point. I'm gonna stew on that until I figure it out, because there's always a path. That's the thing I've learned about design. It's really easy to have that knee-jerk reaction of, oh no, that can't be done. But the longer you think about, okay, well, what if we approach it from this different angle? You know, that's what's super rewarding about that process. It's just, you know, it's like a good edit, right? It's good edits don't just happen on your first cut. It's like several cuts deep, and you've had reviews and revisions with people. And so, you know, we definitely did that with this product, where we were going back and forth. We were showing it to people, seeing how crazy we were as a litmus test, and then coming to some more succinct solutions.
Well, and when you design a product that is, you know, like simple and elegant and kind of feels natural to itself, there can be this feeling of that. Well, of course it's like that. Of course, that's how you'd make a vertical clamp, but it's so not obvious before you get there. And it was reminding me of like anecdotes about the design of the iPhone keyboard, where early on they did not know there would just be a full keyboard that you would type into on an iPhone screen. Like that was not clearly the solution, even though of course we think it is now. So there was stages where, like, you know, it was more like T9 typing, where each key had multiple letters on it, and you'd like press and hold, or like these little sliding gestures, and it took a long time for them to be like, no, let's do the most obvious thing, put a full keyboard on it, and then intelligently have awareness about which key is most likely to be required for the next press based on the word that you're typing, all these things that we're completely used to by now. Or even, you know, pinch to zoom. That's such a great example. Like, it didn't always exist. Pinch to zoom wasn't a thing before. Like, how do you zoom in on something? I don't know. Maybe you double tap, right? Like, maybe you blow on it. Maybe you shake it. None of this existed, and designers had to actually come up with those solutions. So I don't know. I kind of got a little taste of that now that it's sitting in front of me. Like, yeah, of course this is what it looked like, but you know, it wasn't always that way, and I'm glad we got there. And as we're wrapping up, there was a lot of comments in response, like suggesting features or asking how you would build out rigs to do various things. Just a little like small tease for Kondor for the future, that there will be solutions coming that will improve some of these like the kind of biggest quality of life concerns. We've talked about them all. We've gone through down every path of like, well, what about when you want to do this and that? And you guys are aware of all of them. And I love the ways you're thinking about solving in the future. So that's just a teaser, because I'm not going to get into any details. But a lot of the questions that were asked in the YouTube comments will have answers down the road.
I will. Yeah, I'll add a little bit more details, because I know people love a good little leak.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what kind of scoop you can drop on the podcast today, but
I'll just say that, well, first off, I think that phones actually do clamp far better vertically. So anyone that is using their phone to make vertical content, hey, this is obviously the no-brainer option there. But then for those who are wanting to clamp horizontally, there will be an accessory that does a lot more than allow you to do that, but it will be like a go-to for anyone that's also looking to mount their phone horizontally. And it'll serve as a good branch to kind of build off the rest of it, but all keeping that small, simple profile. I think we didn't really touch on this too much, but quickly, like, a phone should be a phone, like, and then these happen to record great quality video and photos. And so this design is intentionally as small and compact as possible. We weren't looking to make some giant rig for the phone.
I mean, the way I think about it is there's less reasons, which they do exist, they definitely exist, less reasons to build out a large horizontal rig on an iPhone because it's already covered so well by mirrorless cameras. Whereas like the reasons you shoot on a phone lend themselves more to the vertical universe. So that's why I wanted to make it the priority. Even though both worlds exist, of course, like I'm going to shoot more YouTube horizontally on my phone this year as well. I've got plans for that. But I don't know. I'm excited. There's going to be a must-have accessory coming eventually. Well, thanks again, Brendan, for everything for the last year of talking through this. And if anybody wants to order the Stalman Clam, as of recording this, they're like about to ship. Maybe they just did once I released this. I don't know, but they are very ready. And thanks for the support, everyone.
Thank you.